There are a lot of queries that are coming to our channel, and let me get Kamaljeet Kaur Sandhu as she looks at this 9-page document released by the Ministry of Home Affairs very carefully. Kamal, as on date, as of now, till the 31st of May, there will be no metro, no flights except scheduled emergency flights or medical flights or special flights. No flights, no metro, no trains. Is that what the government is saying, except bus transport also, only with the consent of one state to the other? Kamal.
The biggest takeaway for lockdown 4 is that mass transport like air and train, they're still prohibited. Delhi Metro, not allowed. The takeaway is that if there is an arrangement which is to be made by the government, is the one which is allowed, which is on need basis. For instance, for migrants, Shramik trains, special buses being arranged. Whether they are reaching those people and they are getting benefits of it is another story. But clearly at this point of time, the lockdown 4 is emphasizing that there will be no movement of people, and that is what is to ensure. However, workplaces can resume in terms of getting people back, but a lot of onus and responsibility being put on companies. As a matter of fact, if you actually look at the penal provisions, there are obviously, this is giving a lot of power to the authorities, whether it's state or the center. Says if you try and prohibit anybody from performing duty, there could be a penalty. If you raise alarm, whether there are facts which are contrary to what the government is saying, there is an offense for that. Whether you're overcharging in certain situation, that is also offense. So in that sense, a lot of penalties being included, but the one which is being put on the company, because remember, several of the companies had actually gone down and complained that they fear that they would be penalized, something which was looked into by the court, whether it is about salaries or whether it is about penal action, especially in the wake of what happened in Vizag, the gas leak, because they were trying to open up and that's when the gas leak happened. So all these are micromanagement. What is very clear is that economic activity is a key factor in resumption of work sphere. But most of the guidelines remain absolutely the same. The order is much more crisp compared to the previous one. This one is much more brief because it talks about what is not permitted, then saying what is permitted. So in a greater sense, once the state have a greater power, remember, several of the states had announced their own lockdown extension. Now they will decide what is allowed and what is not allowed, especially in red, green and orange zones, mostly getting a thumbs up even from the center. But when it comes to the red zone and containment zone, these are sensitive measures. And that is why they're saying you should
tell us,
ensure that nobody
gets... Absolutely. Rahul, it's very interesting. So we will see more traffic on the roads in the days and weeks to come, next 2 weeks at least. We will see more movement of people, but the government is also laying a lot of emphasis on what the government describes is its Brahmastra, the Arogya Setu app. So privacy concerns raised by some notwithstanding, the government is going all guns blazing in using the Arogya Setu app to decide who's safe and who should be out, Rahul.
Lot of contract tracing at a time when the government is easing a lot of restrictions is going to be extremely important, how and where people are moving. Also, since the Arogya Setu app empowers the person to one, put out details about himself and get himself a sense of safe endorsement. Also, on the other hand, can come to know if there is somebody with a contamination around him. What is important is that today's guidelines are really enabling in terms of easing of restrictions. If you go over the point number 8, para 1 in the guidelines, it says all other activities will be permitted except those which are specifically prohibited. Now, barring the containment areas where only essentials are allowed, in rest of the areas, we find that there are very few items which are prohibited now, like malls and cinema halls and education and others. That means several elements which are point of curiosity among people, like barber shops, e-com and several others, those activities can resume. Since a lot of activity will start getting resumed, there will be a greater focus on people trying to ensure that the standard operating procedures are followed in terms of protocols, and also the Arogya Setu app importance will really multiply from here on.
Okay, so Kamal, what happens to those who don't have the Arogya Setu app? When I had interviewed Professor Vijay Raghavan, the principal scientific advisor to the Prime Minister, he also spoke of those who don't have a smartphone. There would be some kind of you call up a number and on a regular 2G phone, and then you get a response to say whether that person is safe or not. Practically, that would be extremely difficult to implement with thousands and thousands of people. So is the government emphasizing that anyone who wants to be out of his or her house would need to have an Arogya Setu app to be able to be in a public place, Kamal? And how will the government enforce this?
See, on paper, it looks all very good, but there are practical issues to it. There are thousands of migrants who are walking each and every day. You would have seen many. We've seen a whole lot of them. So clearly, it's more about life than getting about Arogya Setu, because these people are looking for livelihood. This is going to be an issue. Not everybody has a phone. We do anticipate that India is a progressive country, and we do have phones, multiple phones, perhaps even with one person. But a person who is below the poverty line, when he's talking about his livelihood, where does he get Arogya Setu app? This is something that the government really now needs to look into, and whether anybody and everybody is going to actually put your GPS on and put the location on, whether a person who is feeding information is telling a complete truth, because these are a given takeaway that those person who are actually even infected will put in. This is how it's worked in some of the other countries. But in India, the sort of resources that we have and the sort of population that we have, it seems very, very difficult. But again, it's an attempt by the government. It's a push that they have. I remember many of those who have questioned the privacy issue in Arogya Setu app being one. The other is about the effectiveness of this particular app. This is something, I mean, anywhere that we've gone around, camera persons have gone around, anywhere, nobody's actually asked you to open up your mobile and show whether you've downloaded that Arogya Setu app. And the other part is, even if you've downloaded it, what is the guarantee that the other person has responded in the same way? So there are a lot of question marks on this particular app. But this is an earnest method as far as the government is concerned. They are claiming that this is a must, especially putting onus and responsibility on companies, or that your own employees need to have it. That is a directive. So they are trying to ensure that as many possible should download it. Perhaps more city-centric, more urban-centric, because remember, the green zones are the rural areas. It's your urban cities, pockets, especially when we're talking about Delhi, Mumbai.
Okay. Let me take this to Nolan
Indore,
Pinto,
Bhopal,
since, Karnataka had implemented green zone, opening up of green zones earlier and before other states. Is the Arogya Setu app mandatory in the state of Karnataka? Is it being enforced either by the state government or by companies? For example, in Delhi, the MHA guideline is that for companies employing people, they need to ensure that people have the Arogya Setu app. Is that being enforced in Karnataka? And Karnataka also has buses operational, if I know correctly, in green zones. Nolan.
Well, Gaurav, as of now, we have actually gone across the places. We have gone to the orange zones. We have also gone to green zones. We do not see a lot of people actually using this particular app. We're not too sure whether companies are actually enforcing, telling their employees that they must use this. But outside, in the open, when you actually talk to people, no one is utilizing this particular app because the government is not clearly enforcing it over here. The people who actually know about it, who want to use it, who know about the benefits of it, are downloading it on their own and are utilizing it. But there is no proper enforcement as such that you must download this or else you will be penalized or fined in Karnataka as of now.
Okay, because what is extremely interesting is a story that we are working on here. I interacted with someone whose Arogya Setu app showed that there was a moderate risk of infection. So not everyone using the Arogya Setu app is green. Somebody's Arogya Setu app showed moderate risk of infection, and should such a person be permitted to enter offices or homes or a shop is a big question that people will grapple with. Nilanshu, what about Uttar Pradesh? Is it being implemented? The Arogya Setu app, is downloading the app mandatory, though it's a part of the MHA guidelines?
Gaurav, we did a reality check few days back, and in the government offices, people are using Arogya Setu app. All the government employees have been told to use it. Also, the police personnel, including the cops who are deployed in hotspot areas on frontline duties, are using the Arogya Setu app. Instruction has been issued by the senior police officials. But if we talk about the masses, the common man, most of the people living in the rural areas who do not have mobile phones, smartphones, cannot obviously don't know about the Arogya Setu app. So this is the problem, that the masses are not using it. But yes, if we talk about government offices, also in some of the private banks, offices which are open, people are aware about the Arogya Setu app. They are using it, but the awareness in the rural area is very less, Gaurav.
Okay. Now, Hemendra, for economic activity to resume, Hemendra, people may come out of their homes if they have cars or if they have two-wheelers. What about the workforce for factories? How will they get to work? Is the government putting systems in place to ensure that buses are provided to the workforce? That's the only way economic activities will resume.
Well, that is one challenge before the government of Madhya Pradesh. In fact, the government has said that they are going to ensure that the workforce reaches the place of work, but that is a promise that they have made. Right now, nothing of that sort is being arranged, because right now the priorities are slightly different. The first priority before the government of Madhya Pradesh right now is to ensure that the migrant laborers, they come and reach their homes safely, and also those who have to move out of Madhya Pradesh, they safely move out of Madhya Pradesh. The government is focused on that, heavily invested on that. Right now, the second priority is to increase, to start the economic activity across the state. For that, several measures have been taken, several things have been announced. Also, they are saying that in rural areas, people would be allowed, because relatively the entire state in terms of rural areas is in the green zone. So the economic activity has to first start from the rural areas. For that, the procurement of wheat and other essential, the crops that the farmers have been growing, the process of procuring that has been speeded. So people are moving around in villages and in orange and green zones, but in red zones, there is no question of any economic activity as of now, because the first priority in red zones and in containment areas is to contain this virus, and it has been made clear by the government that in these particular red zones, particularly cities like Bhopal, Indore and Ujjain, there would be no economic activity in terms of industrial activity.
Okay, very, very interesting. No economic activity whatsoever in red zone. And let me take you straight to an area which at one point of time was known as one of India's biggest tourist spots, Agra, but now is seen as one of the biggest containment zones, a red zone. I want to take you to Agra, where India Today's Ashutosh Mishra now joins me. And Ashutosh, lockdown 4.0. Now, when we talk about Agra, we think of the Taj Mahal, we think of the Red Fort. But now when we're talking about Agra, we're thinking of a red zone and not a red fort. How will lockdown 4.0 be implemented in and around Agra where you are?
Well, this time what we are seeing, Gaurav, that since the larger power has been given to the states, they will decide as far as red, orange and green zones are concerned. But when we are talking about Agra this time, the challenges are actually little higher as far as the state government is concerned. Looking at the adjoining states like Haryana, Rajasthan, and migrants, those who are arriving all the way from Gujarat, even in Maharashtra, transiting through Bharatpur border and entering through Agra. And that is the biggest challenge, and perhaps why I'm here at the ISBT. And if I could just put you through these images, where hundreds, not just 100, but thousands of these immigrants, migrants who are from different states have arrived here. And the biggest challenge is to ensure that they reach safe back home, and perhaps why lockdown 4.0 is bringing more challenge. So IG Agra Satish is joining me here in this broadcast. Sir, lockdown 4.0 has been announced. What is going to be the biggest challenge as far as the administration and police is concerned, particularly looking at the arrival of the migrants from neighboring states, and they are yet to travel hundreds of kilometers?
Well, let me tell you that Agra, and in fact Agra and Mathura both, these are two districts whose borders are sharing with both Rajasthan as well as Haryana. And as we all know that NCR and the other states like Punjab and all, traditionally they have been the recipients of migrant laborers. And mostly these people are from the eastern parts of the country, states like Bihar, Jharkhand, some portions of Madhya Pradesh and all. And this is the access gate. Most of these people who want to return home, because they are coming from the northern parts of the country, so they find Agra and Mathura as the points where the state border, that is the Uttar Pradesh government state borders, begin from here.
So how will you ensure a smooth transition further their transportation, they reach home back?
Well, I mean, it is a huge management exercise, and I'm really grateful to the district administration as well as my young team of officers. They are tirelessly working for the last almost now, 55 days plus. And we are trying to arrange buses. We are also applying some special trains. And the whole idea is to make their journey comfortable so that these people, they reach back their home safely.
So this is a heavy exercise, Gaurav, yet to be done by the administration in different states, looking at the powers now going to be vested with the states after the NDMA new notification. But yes, these migrants going home is now going to be another challenge even during lockdown 4.0. Back to you.
Oh, absolutely, Ashutosh. That was Inspector General of Agra Range, Satish Ganesh, giving details about how they are attempting to implement the taking back of these migrants who are now stuck in Agra. But Rahul, on the one hand, the government is saying gradually we will reopen the economy, restart the country, people get back to work. On the other hand, the workforce is going back to the villages. So isn't there a disconnect in what the government is doing and what the government wants?
You see, Gaurav, there is a government is caught in a catch-22 situation. Given the fact that the employers retrenched people or gave no assurances of jobs, the migrants were pushed into a point where they were not able to sustain livelihood, or perhaps were not feeling that there is a future which is secure as far as where their places in area of work is concerned. So they decided, out of fear and several other factors, to move back. Now that the restrictions are being eased, the government, the factories will need workers. There were twin problems. One, those who are available, how do they come? So interstate bus movement, intrastate bus movement, passenger movement has been allowed. That's one positive, because those who are staying will be able to join work. The second is the migrant. I think this opening of restrictions may spur certain MSMEs and smaller working units to start operating, which will mean migrants who are still in the shelters and other places, who might be queuing up for getting onto trains and buses, they might have a second thought and they might go back to work. I think this easing of restriction has come at a very appropriate time, though a lot have gone back, migrants have gone back. But I think this easing of restrictions, say for example, barring the containment zone, shops can open in most markets, barring there is a requirement that you have to do it on staggered hours. I think that opening up will spur certain amount of activity, and that will make a lot of migrants go back. Yes, definitely, there could well be a shortage, but I think this cycle of workforce restrictions being easing could actually bring a lot of relief.
Fair enough. For the benefit of viewers who are just joining us, this is the biggest story here on India Today. Lockdown 4.0 has now been announced by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Very, very strict guidelines issued. And take a look on your television screens as we give you details of Lockdown 4.0. So as of now, all domestic and international travel prohibited till the 31st of May, except of course those sanctioned by the government specifically. Metro rail services, not to be resumed. Schools, colleges, educational institutions, coaching institutions will not resume, but online education to continue. Hotels, restaurants, hospitality services, except those meant for housing, health, police, government officials and care workers, curtailed. All cinema halls, malls, gyms, swimming pool, entertainment parks, theatres, bars and auditoriums will remain closed. All social, political, sports, entertainment, academic, cultural, religious congregation strictly prohibited. All religious places of worship shall remain closed till the 31st of May. Activities permitted with restrictions except, and remember this is extremely important, except in containment zones. Interstate movement of passenger vehicles and buses only with the mutual consent of different states and union territories. Interstate movement of passenger vehicles and buses to be decided by states and union territories. That the government is very clear about. Containment buffer, red zone, green zone, the delineation will be left to the states. In containment zones, only essential services will be permitted. Intensive contact tracing, house-to-house surveillance as required. Night curfew to continue from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. except for essential activities. This is what Government of India is saying, and I once again want to come back to India Today's Kamaljeet Kaur Sandhu. Kamal, government functions, but when it comes to industries, rural areas function, how will labour force get to these industries, the engines to power our growth?
Well, first of all, let me tell you, this is old wine in new bottle. This is what Lockdown 3 extended into Lockdown 4. It has a body of Lockdown 3, but a heart of Lockdown 4. So in a real sense, when we're talking about green zones, which are the rural areas, now the one fear is that some of these migrants may just carry that virus down to those particular green zones and may infect those other people. That is the real worry. But when the government pumps in 40,000 crore into Manrega, they're ensuring that those migrants who are going back actually go back and get livelihood. So jaan hai, jahan hai, but the other factor is that jeene ke liye kamana bhi zaruri hai, and that is where Manrega project is really coming in. So they will ensure that those people who are walking down or using buses or Shramik trains, remember one part of the problem is that the government has not been able to make that particular arrangement. In letter and spirit, they're saying all the right things, but when it comes down to, boils down to the ground reality, perhaps states not being able to take that forward. And this is where the concern is. So one is the Manrega project. The other is that there was a go-ahead for factories to function in green zones, for economic activities, agricultural activities. That was given a go-ahead long time back. But it's the new people who are coming in, who are adding to the workforce. But what happens to the factories? Because some of these factories who now plan to resume may not have the workers who walked away, and they may not come back anytime soon. It's been a very hard journey for them. These are practical realities, and this will be tested in the days to come. This is what Rahul, the new change is going to be about. In urban centers, we've been talking about this in our neighborhood. Many people are just reluctant to go back to office. Many do suggest and are working from home. But this is going to be a new reality in a real sense, that you have to live with coronavirus. And that is why the vulnerable groups have been identified. Anybody above the age of 65, pregnant women, children under the age of 10.
Can you get a haircut now? Can you go to a salon now? And let me take that to Nolan Pinto once again, because it was Karnataka that had taken the lead on this. And Karnataka, are salons open? Can you go to a barber shop? Can you get a haircut in Karnataka? Because in Delhi, it's still, a grey area, not allowed in most places.
Gaurav, in the green zones, they're all open. But as of now, till about an hour ago in Bengaluru, salons, your barber shops were not open. So we just now need to see how exactly the state government goes about with this, because Chief Minister B.S. Yediyurappa had made it very clear. He didn't want an entire ward that had 1 or 2 cases to be a containment zone. According to the Karnataka government, if there's one particular case over here, they wanted a buffer zone of about 100-150 meters. Apart from that, they wanted economic activities to be open. They wanted public transport to be open. So one can assume that tomorrow onwards, we can see at least, because the government wanted even hotels to be open with 30% of people allowed inside. So we just have to see now how exactly the state government takes this forward, because Chief Minister B.S. Yediyurappa had made it very clear. He wants to crank up the system, so one can assume that your barbers and your salons and all should open in those areas that do not have cases in the city.
Fair enough. But is there an apprehension, Rahul Srivastav, that the moment you open up, it could lead to another spike? What's the government doing and what's the contingency to take care of that scenario, that you open up and there would be like a big rise in COVID-19 cases? That's an apprehension, Rahul.
Yes, Gaurav, definitely that's one risk that the government is taking. And I think that's why somewhere, if you notice, this time around the responsibility of fixing the zones and a lot of these have been given to states. Now, that is what that has been given, that the states know their areas the best. They know not only that there are more cases in XYZ area, say Maharashtra knows that they have got more cases in Bombay, but the Maharashtra government also knows that in Dharavi is a real problem zone. So perhaps there can be two different red zones or containment areas with different protocols. That's what the states can do. Second, I think a long duration of lockdown has trained Indians to a certain degree of SOP protocols, and that can stand in good stead. The number of testing is going up. Contact tracing is much better now in terms of protocols. The government is depending on a lot of these things to ensure that from here on things are moving. But I think the responsibility is on state governments, the central government. But Gaurav, how free do people of India want to move from here on, and how well and how fast they want to get out of coronavirus infections or this pandemic depends from here on the people of the country. Be disciplined and you will get out faster. Don't adhere to what the government is telling you, and you will have the pandemic prevailing longer in the country.
And that apprehension and that fear is showing in states like Maharashtra and Gujarat. And Kamal, the Ministry of Home Affairs, we are told it's constantly in touch with the states of Maharashtra and Gujarat. What explains this big spike that's coming from the western region? Is lockdown not being enforced? Is it not being followed? It's not being implemented effectively. Now we are seeing stadia being turned into containment zone, and when we're seeing big quarantine centers coming up in different stadiums in Maharashtra, especially Mumbai.
Well, Gaurav, first let me answer that question about the haircuts and saloon. And if you've not managed to get it, you will be able to get it cut even in the red zone, because that is something which has not been mentioned, and only what is prohibited is mentioned. So that is not given. So perhaps that's in days from now you'll be able to get a haircut. Now, coming back to a more serious issue, which is about areas, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Delhi, bad performing states. They've not been able to really contain them. The numbers are really going up. Gujarat has been one of those cases. So yes, one is that they could not contain it. The spread was much more, perhaps also a signal that many of those people who are carriers were asymptomatic. So they moved to several areas. This is where the government hopes that Arogya Setu app will really come in. But again, it's not been tried and tested in India. And this is where technology can really help. But given the sort of population we have, it really needs a lot of motivation and would need penalty perhaps for people to really download it. But clearly a lot of people who were just carriers and asymptomatic is something which has led to a huge sort of a spike. The other is also boils down to the arrangement by the states, whether they were really able to handle those cases. That is the other big test. Perhaps Dharavi has been a key case because there are people who are staying in clusters, and the number of people who eventually got down to the lines where food was being collected, you could see there was no social distancing. There were bazaars in Tamil Nadu which existed in Chennai. This is where there was Henny, and this is where the complaint has come in as far as Kolkata, Havda are concerned. So again, it's also the number of people and how you're able to contain it. Many people who are asymptomatic also spreading it. So combination of factors there, but again the larger responsibility has moved and shifted onto the states, and they'll have to be much more careful, because the centre is going to say that the first 3 phases, we've handled it well so far, but now onwards, it's your responsibility. We have given you the guidelines, so you have to follow them and ensure that even though you control the containment zones and all the other zones, you are responsible for what happens.
When we talk of the Karnataka model, Nolan, in Karnataka, there was the green zone, the classification into 3 different zones. Has there been an apprehension that if you open up, the green zone could turn orange or red? What's the result showing on ground?
Well, in fact, Gaurav, initially the Karnataka government wanted this. They wanted the orange, the green and the red. The Chief Minister's earlier apprehensions was that the people from the city should not take the infection to the rural areas. Now, well, almost 98% they've actually managed to do that. Our rural areas are still very clean. But what's happening as of now on the ground is this. After they allowed the movement of passengers, interstate passengers, those people who came from Dubai, from America, who all are in quarantine, the cases have actually spiked, Gaurav. Thankfully, they are all in quarantine, but this is the biggest issue that Karnataka is now grappling with. There's an increase in the number of cases from 20, 30 per day. We are getting about 45. Today, it was about 54, 55. All these people have actually traveled from abroad, from Mumbai and all these places. So this is their issue. Still, the government says that the onus is on the people. You and I, we need to take care, because if there is no business, if the industries are not open, then where will the money come from? How will the government go about with its work? How will we have money to spend for our food and other necessities?
Fair enough. I mean, that's the point. The centre is saying the responsibility now lies with the state. The state saying the responsibility also lies with the people. The people themselves need to ensure that they maintain social distancing. Why is that not working in the state of Maharashtra? What's the reason for a spike virtually every day in Maharashtra? I want to cut across to India today is Vidya, our person on ground zero. And Vidya, you're in Goregaon, but you've travelled across Mumbai. Explain the spike in Maharashtra and how does Maharashtra intend to handle lockdown 4.0, Vidya?
Well, if you remember, lockdown 3 was also implemented just the way that lockdown 4 also will be implemented. Remember, lockdown 3 was when the Maharashtra government decided that not because especially in green zones or orange zones, there were industries that could be opened up. Similarly, the industries will be kept open even in lockdown 4. But unlike the fact that they decided that 5 shops would be open in other areas in every lane, Mumbai Municipal Commissioner decided that no such thing will really happen because of the sheer fact that there have been more than 500 deaths in the city and thousands of people are still fighting coronavirus. And that is the reason why individual authorities lay actually in the hands of the local bodies, which decide as to what they really want to do, whether they have to open up industries, whether they want to open up shops for people, offices for people to really go in. So all that is at the end of the day will be with the local authorities to decide. Here, especially in Maharashtra, we have been seeing that especially in red zones like Mumbai, like Pune, a lot of other areas, such kind of contingency measures are being taken where only essential items are still being sold. Only grocery shops as well as medical shops. These are the only 2 things being opened up as yet, and that will continue in lockdown 4 as well.
So no economic activity in red zones. And is there, there was initially a proposal that to reduce the size of the red zone from an entire city, reduce it just to some containment zone from where a maximum number of cases was coming. Will that be implemented in Mumbai, or just now they're taking no chances because of the spike, especially at a time where club lawns, stadium, they are being converted into quarantine centers in Mumbai?
Well, the stadium is no longer being converted into a containment zone or a quarantine center. In fact, the BMC has come up with an idea where they are planning that in case, though they already have 50,000 beds with them, which they can actually at any point, further it to 1 lakh beds in the entire city of Mumbai. But at this point, they are saying that if they really need more beds, then parking areas, parking lots, the RA colony, those can be converted into, containment, areas for dealing with COVID-19 or treatment of COVID-19 patients. But at this moment, yes, the entire city is under a lockdown. There is no specific area. The BMC has also done one thing, is changed the entire formula which it had been using until now to see what could be a containment zone. So there are isolation zones which has been added in instead of containment zones. And apart from that, better utilization of policemen were until now being parked outside containment zones. That reduction has been done. These policemen are pulled out of these containment zones and pulled in to the slum areas where people were not really believing in what the authorities were saying. They're still going out. So policemen have been asked to guard these slum areas more instead of the containment zones.
Keep tracking that story. I will come back to you for more. Remember, we have the biggest team of reporters. We're getting you a perspective from across the length and breadth of our country. A quick break. News and updates continue on India Today. This remains our top focus at 9 tonight. Keep watching India Today.